Okay, good morning, everybody. Please take your seats. We're going to get started with our work session. Okay. Bless you. All right, members, please take your seats. Like to get started? Okay,
We don't have two of our substitutes.
right. Representative Kenny, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Welcome to Environment and Agriculture this morning.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to begin this morning with a work session on two bills. I know we're waiting on some final draft of the amendment for the architectural paint recycling. So why don't we talk about HB 1698 first, which is relative to the use of drones for the aerial application of pesticides. I did have a copy of the amendment on the table there, if you'd like it. But basically, what this amendment does, different than the amendment that I presented when I brought the bill to the committee last week, is that now I am pointing to, on line 5, as you have a copy in front of you, as that unmanned aircraft as defined in RSA 422:3, Roman numeral 30. And that one, as opposed to the one that I had before, which was I think 27, points to the definition of unmanned aircraft as opposed to small unmanned aircraft. The federal definition of small unmanned aircraft had a weight limit of 55 pounds. And I believe some of these drones that spray pesticides on crops are a little bit heavier than that. So, so as not to have a problem, I am now pointing it to the correct RSA as well as federal definition for unmanned aircraft. And so this amendment to the original bill also makes that spraying cannot happen above 20 feet above ground level. So, and I checked with the New Hampshire Farm Bureau and also the Agriculture Commissioner, and everybody was all okay with that. So this is the amendment that I would be presenting this afternoon when we exec the bill. I'm sorry, this morning. Yes, this morning. Hopefully we'll be done by noon and we can get out of here. You have a comment, Representative Creighton?
Yes, ma'am. I read through the amendment and answered three of my questions. The first was bringing it down to 20 feet and spraying down created actually less of a footprint from a blowing perspective than spraying up from the ground. So those two aspects. And then and then the third one was just the weight. It said they weigh up to 400 pounds, and this accomplishes that. So I'm good with this
Okay.
with this bill, with this amendment.
Okay,
Over.
Representative Bixby.
So there was a person who was supposed to who is in the business of doing contract spraying with drones from New York State, who was going to be with us for our hearing last week, but got called back for a family emergency, so wasn't able to join us. He did send a letter, and he indicated that the changes that this current amendment makes resolve all the issues that that he saw in terms of being able to get the proper permitting and to do the spraying in New Hampshire. And so I think that it's important to know that the people in the industry feel that this is an appropriate amendment. I would second what Representative Creighton said about this being the drone spraying being a lower impact method of applying pesticides than ground spraying because it can be more targeted, and it because the propellers actually drive the spray downward. It reduces the level of drift in a way that that would be below what you get with a ground spraying rig.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe that this is a must-pass bill for agriculture. And as everyone said, the 20-foot height is sufficient. The other thing is when you're down spraying, you're actually getting into the plants better to get better coverage. And this will actually help agriculture across the state because it'll help with reducing capital costs and being able to target things a little bit better instead of just doing an overspray of areas that don't need it.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also wanted to say I fully support this bill. I appreciate Madam Chair's amendment. Originally, I had heard, as I think some of us did, from beekeepers who had concerns, but I was glad to hear in the testimony that the issue around the neonics, I guess is what it's called, right? That isn't an issue we're talking about here anyway, but especially with the amendment that Madam Chair has offered to reduce the height from 50 to 20 feet, I think makes this an even better bill. It's important for our farmers. So I definitely fully support the direction it's going in.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion about the amendment or this bill or, okay, I think we're good with that. So next on our discussion list this morning for our work session is the 1504 relative to architectural paint recycling. And I believe there is an amendment on being printed as we speak. And I'd like Representative Murray to elaborate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so those of you, does everybody have a copy of what I had handed out, which is, yes, thank you. So what we would like to see here is that this bill has the ability to address some of the concerns that this subcommittee, yes, I can give you 2 copies, I'm so sorry.
Yep. Okay.
And
Does anyone else need, does anyone else need this preliminary draft?
I believe I gave it to Representative Kenny. Yes.
Do you have another one?
Yes, of course. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry
Okay.
about that, Madam Chair.
Sure, go right ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that was my fault. So when we're looking at the program, I took into consideration the subcommittee's thoughts and listened very intently. I know that this body has had a lot of focus and energy on this program and wanting to make sure that we had something that we felt could stand up to any sort of entity that comes through an RFP process and seeks to stand up a recycling stewardship program. So I wanted to take folks through generally the organization of it. The paint stewardship program starts to define things through 149M. One of the pieces of information that is on page, I believe it's 5, if we're looking at things, it's starts with, let me double, since I don't have it. 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, 5. We have 149M, proposals to establish a paint stewardship program at the very bottom, section 1. It says any producer, representative organization that wishes to become a stewardship organization shall, by January 1, 2024, thank you, 5, submit a plan for the establishment of a paint stewardship program for the department for approval, together with a non-refundable application fee specified in paragraph 3 below, and also establish in rules. I have stitched together various iterations of the bill, and some of them had an initial application fee listed inside the text of the bill, but I felt like that was a better conversation for rules to establish the fee structure. We had talked about that. We've seen that in many other circumstances where rules establishes those types of fees. On the very next page at the top in section 2, this talks about a retailer or political subdivision, and this was our conversation on the mays and the shalls about participation versus collecting a fee, and what our general consensus was. And the statement says that a retailer or political subdivision may participate in being a collection site, but paint manufacturers shall participate in the paint stewardship program and fees associated within the state of New Hampshire to ensure the paint stewardship program remains viable for years to come. So in the event that they do not want to be a collection site, if they sell certain brands of paint, they still must collect through the manufacturer's fees that are established on the paint prior to sale. That still must be collected to ensure that when folks are then going to any other site that is available, that money is there for the program to run. Then just a little bit further down under that section, it also talks about a radius. 25 miles seemed to be the conversation that we were having around a permanent collection point, whether it's a municipality that stands one up or a retailer that stands one up. There should be one within a 25-mile radius throughout the state. The next page on subsection 4, at the very top, says that a non-refundable application fee shall be paid by the applicant to review the paint stewardship plan. Again, it just re-enumerates the fact that the fee structure should be determined in rules. The very next page, we talk about 1A, where it starts with the text: the original assessment shall not be more than $3.50 for cans above 1 gallon and no less than 75 cents for quantities less than or equal to 1 pint. So this was addressing some of the conversation around fee structures being adjusted in other states. I will also note that within this bill, we also have a requirement that annually the fee structure should be revisited, so that we do not have a circumstance that comes upon us where we need to do that because the fees had not been reevaluated in some time or anything like that. So every year, that fee structure should get looked at to make sure that that is keeping up with what is necessary. The next page, I don't really have anything of like major note. Same with the following page. And then we go to 2 pages afterwards. It says where financial assurance is required. There's a subsection 6 above that. I don't know if folks are there. Paint received at a collection location shall be considered universal waste. This is something that we heard from the department, that they had concerns over hazardous waste versus universal waste. And I think I have the correct environmental statute there. And it says nothing in this section shall otherwise reclassify paint as universal waste elsewhere in the statute. This strictly applies to the places that receive the paint for drop-off locations. Anything else would stay as it should be with the classifications for hazardous waste materials. The following page, there's nothing of major consideration that we didn't really discuss. The other portion of this conversation, I think we had just wanted to make sure that if for some reason an entity seeks to exist any longer and is no longer operating under the program, that there is an opportunity that there are notifications to the state and there's an ability to recoup any funds owed to the state or with regard to the those fees. So there's like sort of an requirement for fiscal oversight and management and assurity that those things are being met. other than that, I think that we have addressed by and large the things that we had talked about. The other small change was with regard to when we looked at, I just want to continue on. So beyond page 6, we're looking at 1, 2, 3 pages past that subsection 6. It's subsection H, an evaluation of the effectiveness of paint stewardship programs. Okay. So in this conversation is regarding trade secrets and proprietary information by a manufacturer. That information is there to make sure that their interests are also protected. I mean, because the paint is reclassified, so there's antitrust carve-outs and things like that. However, there have been new EPA regulations with regard to certain classes of chemicals not being considered proprietary information, and so long as that regulation comports with EPA regulations, I think that should stand the way it should be. And with that, that's it.
Hey, does anybody have any questions? Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple questions. Let me just get to the page. When we're talking about any producer representative that wishes to become the stewardship organization shall by January 1 submit a plan. What happens if someone decides after that date that they want to be part of the program? Is there anything in here that talks about that?
Thank you. So this would open up an opportunity for applications for the plan, and then the department will then review certain plans. So there will be an opportunity established in rules for them to set a window for when they receive those and when the last date is for the plans to be received by. And that is in January. And then the goal would be to give entities a full calendar year to get up to speed before the program would launch. So,
Follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Another question is we have in a couple sections about non-refundable application fees, but there's no limit on what we're going to charge. I mean, I understand it's going to be done on rules, but if we make it onerous, then people won't sign up for it. So I just want to be cautious of that also. And may I?
Sure, follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing is where we talk about the original assessment shall not be more than $3.50 for cans above 1 gallon and no less than 75 cents for quantity less than or equal to 1 pint. Do we have a not more than for those smaller quantities? Or we're just setting that saying it can't be less than 75 cents?
that's correct. I feel like at that point, we're getting into 75 cents is not that much of whether it's a half a pint or a pint, I think that's probably sufficient. And if it needs adjusted as the statute notes, they can do that adjustment. And there's also a provision that they can go through GELCAR to request adjustments.
Okay.
Representative Creighton has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, just a comment, as someone who uses a ton of different paints and stuff like that, I think this is a welcome bill. If you look at the fee of basically $1 a gallon or whatever they come up with, in my mind, that's a fee that's on me. I buy the paint, I use the paint, I should dispose of the paint. Today, there's no easy way to do it. And from what we heard in testimony and what I've read, this makes that possible in an environmentally sound way. And so I commend Representative Murray on her work with the amendment that I think answers a lot of the questions from last week. Thank you.
Representative Bixby.
So I think that Representative Murray has done an amazing job on this, and it is still coming, is still being, getting through the end of the process at OLS. I hope it might be upstairs and printed at this point, but it is conceivable that OLS might have made a couple of typographical errors in the process of doing this. And we're going to be doing a proofreading this week to make sure that any typographical errors get noted. If they are of no significant importance in terms of the content, then that's the sort of thing that can be ironed out in the Senate or even in the enrolled bills process. So we will be doing a proofreading of the bill before it actually comes to the floor, and to make sure that there are no clerical errors that need to be addressed. But I think that what we have before us here really is the core of the content, and I think that Representative Murray has done a really good job of putting this together, and I think that's something we need to go forward with.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I also will echo Representative Bixby's praise for Representative Murray really taking the lead on this. I think this is an important program. I do have one last question, though, regarding retailers, and I want to make sure I understand this. If a retailer buys paint before the start of this program, they're not going to have to worry about the fees on that existing paint order. Is that correct? Because it's going to be on the manufacturer. So they won't be prohibited from selling that paint in the state. Is that correct?
Correct. So when it goes into effect, that's when those fees will start. And that's why we're giving this a year to like ramp up so that folks have time to adjust, apply signage in their establishments, and have clear direction from an entity on what it is that they're actually going to let folks know. Again, like I said, there's no fee collections at the register, and there are no fees being collected at the depositing site. So, and I think we had some conversation around legacy paint. My feeling is that legacy paint will ultimately probably arrive at those locations, but it will quickly phase itself out as, Aunt Sally's under cabinet is being cleaned out and being brought in, and I think that is the desire is to see that any future paint sales has something like this to keep it out of landfilling, and also then to keep these items from being poured into, whether it's kitty litter or any other type of thing, and keeping our environment as clean as possible.
Representative Sofakaitis.
I also want to thank Representative Murray for her leadership on this.
Yes, I want to thank you, Representative Murray, for all your diligence and hard work on this in your subcommittee as well. This is a really good piece of legislation as far as I can see. And in so far as if, typographically, if there's something missing or whatever, I mean, I plan to, once we get the amendment for the exec session, I plan to vote for the amendment. And, we, just so the committee knows, we did have a bill that passed out of our committee that didn't have, the OLS had omitted the effective date from one of our bills. And I had to have it fixed in Ways and Means when it went to the second committee. So, I mean, it's not like we haven't had that happen to us with a typographical error or an omission. But overall, this bill is, I think it's ready to go. So thank you very much for all your work on that. Does anybody else have any other comments on this bill? I'm going to end our work session at this time, and we can convene in another 2 minutes or so. And thank you all for taking the time to go over these two bills this morning that we will be execing shortly.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, my daughter's 25. And the other one is Howard's bill on litter mates to be in the same boat for quarantine coming into the state. Which is also, it's very sensible. I think that's totally. I don't know what the word is. Right.
We wait for,
Right.
Nose job, but my nose job, well, I wish I had like a real nose job, so my nose was broken twice. Once from the Think Fast with the basketball, and the other one from my face hitting the windshield in a car accident. So the third break was when they broke it to refix it because it was so messed up. But I should have like ordered like a Cindy Crawford nose at the same time, but they fixed mine. I'm like, they did, they what, right? They did.
okay. Can I ask our committee members to take their seats, please? Oh,
You live right just the way you are. Don't change it.
Hey, Jim. There you go.
RPR.
Boom, boom, boom. Lots of times to there.
okay, everyone. We'll get underway with our exec session. Our first bill that we are going to consider for executive session is HB 1574, removing regulations on the direct sale of raw milk to consumers. Do I hear a motion for that bill? Representative Dutsey.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move ITL on HB 1574-FN.
Do I hear a second? Representative Kenny.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Representative Dutsey, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I believe it was in the last year or two that we heard a bill very similar to this. And I think at that time, we did increase the amount of raw milk that could be sold to consumers. So I think because enough time has not passed for us to see how that bill plays out in the retail, the consumer market, I believe we should ITL this bill.
Any other further discussion? Representative Bixby.
So over the last decade or so, we've had a number of bills dealing with raw milk. And there are currently two ways that raw milk is dealt with in the state. One is through farms that are inspected and certified by the state, and that can be a larger amount than 20 gallons. And then there are operations that are very small and can produce up to 20 gallons and can produce ice cream in quantities no larger than a 6-ounce serving. The reasons for those were worked out by a former member of this committee who was in the dairy industry for many decades, and I think that his expertise on helping craft what we currently have has been really good, and I think that we don't need to change what we have now.
Representative Creighton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the ITO motion. The thing that really struck out to me in testimony was 150 times risk to health issues associated with this bill as per DHHS. That really struck home. So I agree with the ITL motion. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill just eliminated any amount restrictions, and we need to be very cautious because We have some really great raw milk legislation in this state. Actually, I believe we were one of the leaders at a time when people were fearful of raw milk. And the farmers can take that 20 gallons and can produce hard cheese, butter, kefir, all types of products with that on a daily basis. So I think, and we need to be cognizant that we want to make sure that we keep our freedoms. I would not have been opposed to a small incremental increase, but to have no restrictions would not be in the best interest of public health.
Yeah, Representative Potenza and then Germana.
Yeah, being new, I just think it makes the most sense, how things have been progressed, and that we let this settle for the legislation that just passed either last year or the year before, and have incremental changes as, let this settle, before to kind of wiping out all restrictions. So, I think this is premature.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that Representative Comtois made an excellent point. I think that the legislation that has been enacted has been very good. It's been very good for the state and for our farmers. And there's a chance of, legislation kind of going too far and reversing some of that if we have some issues. So I also think that an incremental approach is appropriate. But as I said, I wanted to second Representative Comtois' point that what we have done has worked really, really well. And it's important that we don't take any steps backwards. So thank you.
Thank you. And I echo those sentiments as well. I think, what we have the most liberal raw milk production, I think, in the nation is what I had heard. And I do think that some of the restrictions that we have put in place in the past really have to do with risk management. And I think we've done it pretty well, and seeing how it works. And we haven't really seen any of the farmers protesting that they want bigger, less restriction or whatever. They seem to have settled in on this pretty well, and are selling their raw milk products. And so I'm absolutely for ITLing this bill, because I don't see any need really to entirely lift the restrictions that we've put in place in the past. So if there's no other discussion on this bill, I would ask that the clerk call the roll, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the motion is ITL on HB 1574. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois. Yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny. Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutzy.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard. Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Busherman.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
20-0. Shall it go on consent?
Seeing no objection, yes, it should be on consent. And I will close out the exec for HB 1574. And I,
The amendments are already upstairs.
okay,
You want to make an attempt to run up?
sure. Why don't we, you want to go ahead and,
Yeah, whatever you think would be the best procedure, whether she should go now or go up in 15.
why doesn't she go when we are at that point?
Okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open up the exec for HB 1698 relative to the use of drones for the aerial application of pesticides. And I would like to move OTP for amendment. Adopt the amendment. I'm sorry. Adopt the amendment 2024-1147H for HB 1698. And
I will second that.
I see Representative Bixby seconding that. Thank you very much. And I'll speak to my amendment, which we had discussed earlier. The amendment to this bill points to RSA 422:3, Roman numeral Roman numeral 30, which defines what unmanned aircraft means, which points to the federal definition of unmanned aircraft. And that the amendment also changes the height at which spraying can occur. It may not exceed 20 feet above ground level. Any discussion on this amendment? Representative Creighton.
Yes, ma'am. This amendment answered the questions that I had. One, the height, in fact, reduces the amount of wind impact and spray over, especially because the drone pushes the pesticide down, whereas if you're going from the ground, it's going up and getting more into the atmosphere, and there's more spread. And then the other thing, the discussion we had with Rep. Potenza that I think is important is the application of this drone pesticide is by professionally licensed folks. And so most of these farms that are using this technique are contracting licensed professionals. If they're doing it by themselves, and they are, in fact, licensed professionals. So I think, again, great work working with folks to overcome some of the issues that we found last week, and I will be voting OTP on this amendment.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so the amendment addresses a couple of things. One is the spray height, which in the original bill was 50 feet. This drops it to 20 feet. That is a great improvement. The other is that it cites the appropriate other statutes that govern aerial spraying, and it allows for drones that are greater than 55 pounds. And those drones have not only so there are pesticide regulations at the state level, and then there are pilot regulations at the federal level. So the one needs to be licensed not only as a pesticide applicator, but also as a drone pilot in order to be able to do this work. That's typically going to be, as Representative Creighton said, a contractor, although a farmer could, in fact, get all those licensing if he or she chose to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is a really great bill, and we should just pass it.
Okay. All right, and any other discussion? Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank you for working on this. This will be a huge win for agriculture in New Hampshire. Not only will it help with really targeting where the pesticides go, but will also help with overspray, and I think we'll see a reduction in pesticides through use of drones. And it will also help reduce the capital outlay that farms have to make if they utilize these drone operators.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion for this bill, this amendment, I would ask the clerk to call the roll for adoption of this amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're adopting Amendment 2024-1147H. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutzy.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard. Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Boschman.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
Amendment is adopted 20-0.
Thank you. With the adopted amendment, I would like to move ought to pass OTPA. Hear a second from Representative Bixby. Thank
Yes, I
you.
will second that.
And speak to my motion is, well, we've said it all, I think, and I think we can go ahead and call the roll on this as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is OTPA. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny. Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart. Representative Bixby?
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis?
Yes.
Representative Dutsy?
Yes.
Representative Murray?
Yes.
Representative Germana?
Yes.
Representative Haskins?
Aye.
Representative Howard? Representative Nab?
Yes.
Representative Morse?
Yes.
Representative Beauchemin?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0 shall it go on consent.
Seeing no objection, yes. Thank you. I'm going to call HB 1698 closed and open up the exec for HB 1703 relative to the sale of kangaroo and caribou meat. Do I hear a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Representative Creighton,
I recommend ITL.
do I hear a second? Representative Nab.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Representative Creighton, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair. The overwhelming argument that pushed me to ITL was the fear and the threat to carbon wasting disease in the state of New Hampshire. We heard testimony that that was not a problem right now, but that could be a significant problem bringing caribou in. Even if you fenced the caribou appropriately, that doesn't mean they couldn't get out or that the disease could not be brought into the state. And I think that the risk of chronic wasting disease to the state overwhelms the desire to commercially grow kangaroo or caribou meat in the state. Over.
Okay, any other comment on that ITL motion? Representative Bixby.
I think that Representative Creighton covered it pretty well.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other discussion, I would like to have the clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is ITL on HB 1703. Representative Creighton?
Aye.
Representative Comtois? Yes. Representative Phillips?
Yes.
Representative Nelson?
Yes.
Representative Seidel?
Yes.
Representative Cahill?
Yes.
Representative Kenny? Representative Potenza?
Yes.
Representative Smart? Representative Bixby?
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis?
Yes.
Representative Dutsy?
Yes.
Representative Murray?
Yes.
Representative Germana?
Yes.
Representative Haskins?
Aye.
Representative Howard? Representative Nab?
Yes.
Representative Morse?
Yes.
Representative Beauchemin?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
20-0 shall it go on consent.
Seeing no objection, yes. Put that on consent, and I close the exec for HB 1703. And I open up the exec session for HB 1145, prohibiting the private ownership of landfills. And I would like to make the motion of ITL. Do I hear a second? Representative Creighton.
Ma'am, I second that motion.
Okay, I will speak to my motion then. I believe that this bill should be ITL'd simply because there is nothing prohibiting the state right now from opening a landfill. And prohibiting private ownership, I certainly have problems with prohibiting private ownership of anything. But this bill is meant to deal with the issue of out-of-state trash and the amount of out-of-state trash that comes into New Hampshire. While I believe this bill is well-intentioned, I just don't see that this is a necessary thing to do, simply because, as I stated before, the state has full ability right now to open up a landfill. And that's all I would have to say. And I welcome any other comments. Representative Bixby.
So the issue, the core issue with this is in fact out-of-state trash. And the problem with out-of-state trash is that the state does not have the authority to fully regulate out-of-state trash or can't regulate out-of-state trash any differently than in-state trash because of the Interstate Commerce Clause in the Constitution. And that means that we can't do things that would prohibit putting out-of-state trash into our landfills unless we had those same prohibitions on in-state trash. which this really constrains our ability to control what sort of out-of-state trash is coming in. It also, the Interstate Commerce Clause also would say that we can't charge differential rates for out-of-state trash and in-state trash. We can't make exclusions on particular types of out-of-state trash if we put those, if any of that sort of trash is put into landfills from in-state sources. By requiring that new landfills be publicly owned, and that could be either at the state level or at a county or municipal level, that would give us the power to say that we would be able to charge differential rates for out-of-state and in-state trash at a publicly owned landfill. We would be able to say there are certain things that we will not accept from out of state in a public landfill. We would be able to say that we can put a cap of, any amount that a cap of any severity or strength on the total amount of out-of-state trash coming in, so that it really gives us a whole lot more control. In terms of how this works with business, the bill actually says that if it's a state-owned landfill, it would have to be operated by a private company that would be hired through the full RFP process to manage that landfill. And this is actually something, so across the country, roughly half of the landfills that are operating across the country right now are publicly owned, and the ones of those that are most successful are the ones that are using a public-private partnership like what this bill would create. So I think that this is really a way of helping New Hampshire take control of what trash comes into the state and how it's dealt with.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And although I understand what Representative Bixby is trying to say, we do not currently prohibit that in statute. We also know that we have municipalities that have their own landfills and do prohibit trash from out of state and can dictate currently what is taken in. And then we have cooperative places that have that also. So there is nothing prohibiting the publicly owned landfills now. So if a county or a municipality thinks that this is an important issue, they can take this up on their own without legislation.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Bixby hit a lot of the points that I wanted to hit. This is the one bill dealing with out-of-state waste that allows us to do several things. I won't go over them again, as Representative Bixby has already explained it well. Also, the point that this is not reinventing the wheel. More than half of the landfills in the United States today, including several in states around us here in New England, are publicly owned. And of course, some we have here in New Hampshire. There are 2 points that I want to emphasize. One, in response to the point, which is well taken, that Representative Comtois just made about there's nothing in legislation. Madam Chair made this point before that would prohibit the state from doing this now. The fact of the matter is we will not need more than one landfill in the state, especially if we get our act together on some of our reduction goals, which I'm skeptical about. But even with the track that we're currently on, we're not going to need more than one landfill in this state for the next century, for the rest of this century. If private companies are allowed to continue to open landfills in the state, it's not about need, it's about profit. It's about being able to continue to take unlimited out-of-state waste. If we're looking at one more landfill in the state of New Hampshire to get us through the rest of the 21st century, it shouldn't be a private landfill that can take as much out-of-state waste as it wants to. As they want to. It should be a publicly owned and privately operated, if it's state ownership, entity that can give us the benefits that Representative Bixby referred to before. And I want to reiterate a point that I made when we heard the bill in the first place, was that if we're talking about the public expense here, I think it is clear, if any of us asked our constituents how they feel about being the dumping ground of waste from all over New England, I think that where they stand on that is pretty clear. I think what our duty in terms of representing their wishes is also pretty clear. And I think if we asked them, our constituents across the state, if they would be willing to take that hit per person on their taxes in order to buy the land, in order to assure that we will not be the dumping ground for out-of-state waste in perpetuity, I'm confident that our constituents on either side of the aisle would absolutely support that in a heartbeat. So for all of those reasons, I think that this is the right direction for us to go. I also want to point out that with the study committee for out-of-state waste, at least when we produced the report, we had support from all members of that committee. And that was 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. We all supported that when we approved the final report. We also have bipartisan support, as you can see on the sponsorship, including bipartisan support on this committee. I want to thank Representative Potenza, who has worked on these issues regarding out-of-state trash. So I think that this is an issue that we can get bipartisan support for on the floor, and I have absolutely no question that it has broad support across the state. Thank you.
Representative Creighton and then Representative Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I'm not as confident as my neighbor here about everyone in this state willing to pay the additional cost. I'm not. The other thing is this bill, I think, limits the options to the state in terms of if there is only one, to make it the most effective, the most efficient, and the safest it can be. I think we should look at all options, whether it's public or private. If we pass this bill, then that takes options off the table that could make it more safe, more efficient, and more effective. Over.
Thank you, Representative Morse.
Thank you. I just would like to sort of second a lot of the comments that were made by Representative Germana. And I understand the hesitation to limit private ownership of businesses and respect that position. However, I do think that when it comes down to public health and safety, we need to make sure that we are being very careful about making sure that that's going to be regulated to the best of our abilities, so that we don't continue to see New Hampshire be #1 for different types of cancer in New England, and so many health concerns that we see on the rise here, largely due to seeing all of this out-of-state trash come into our communities and cause further concerns for our environment and our constituents. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Potenza.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate or ditto so much of what Representative Germana said. I think the clear piece here is that it's not just, it's a public-private partnership, because it's not just eliminating private, and it's need-based. I think that's the most important thing here. Do we really want a private company just, buying up land to put a landfill in if there's no need? It just doesn't seem to make sense. This isn't a person coming in here and manufacturing widgets. We're talking about trash, and we're talking about environmental impact. We're talking about the health and safety of all our New Hampshire citizens. I think this is a good balance. I very much support the bill, and that's it.
Thank you. Any other Representative Sofakaitis and then Representative Haskins?
We have found in these years since I've been on this committee that it was a business model to find towns that were unzoned, and to have a private company come in and say that this area needs a landfill, and that they would set people in these small towns against each other by business practices. And it was very distressing for me to see when I would go around, I would see and ask about the capacity, and people would say at the landfills, oh, we have a 40-year capacity, or we have a 50, 60. That's a lot of years. And so people were being told that we need these landfills and they don't need them. And then what they were doing is just bringing trash from out of state. So something to increase knowledge. I think that getting people to start understanding that we all make trash, that's for sure, but we can dispose of it smartly, and that we don't need to pollute or, for lack of a better word, rape our environment to put these huge landfills in our most pristine and lovely places. So I think this is a wonderful bill, and I'm glad to support it.
Thank you, Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard very compelling testimony about this bill. We had 311 people sign in support. We have a trash problem in the state. I think a public-private partnership is one of the ways we can attack that problem. People have talked about the environmental impacts. Some 38 years ago, it was decided that we needed private landfills, and now we have come to the point where we understand we need local control. Local control is a very popular topic in the House, so I think that will augur in our favor with this bill. I think it's timely, I think we need it, and I hope people will support it. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none. When you register your vote, I'd appreciate you putting on make sure you put your microphone on. Getting an email saying that people can't be heard with their votes, and I don't want your vote to be missed. So I would ask now that the clerk call the roll on this
Thank you.
ITL motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is ITL. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois. Yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
No.
Representative Smart.
Yes.
Representative Bixby.
No.
Representative Sofakidis.
No.
Representative Dutsey.
No.
Representative Murray.
No.
Representative Germana.
No.
Representative Haskins.
No.
Representative Howard.
No.
Representative Nab.
No.
Representative Morse.
No.
Representative Beauchemin.
No.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Vote is 9 to 11. The motion fails.
Do I hear a motion, Representative Bixby?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move OTP on HB 1145.
And do I hear a second? Representative Germana. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I believe that we've pretty much covered the discussion, so let's just take a vote.
All right. If there's no other comments to be made, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll on OTP motion for HB 1145.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is OTP. Representative Creighton.
Nay.
Representative Comtois. No. Representative Phillips.
No.
Representative Nelson.
No.
Representative Seidel.
No.
Representative Cahill.
No.
Representative Kenny.
No.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart.
No.
Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutsey.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Yes.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Beauchemin.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
On OTP, no.
Okay, 11-9. Motion passes.
Okay. Guess
Is anyone going to write a minority report?
I will write the minority report.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close out the exec for HB 1145 and open up the exec for HB 1632 relative to out-of-state waste. And do I hear a motion, Representative Germana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move OTP on HB 1632.
And I will second that. And Representative Germana, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is another approach that came out of the study committee on out-of-state waste. We heard testimony from the Attorney General's office that there are ways regarding that we can, in effect, challenge the interstate commerce clause if we can demonstrate that there are sufficient needs. In this case, the argument would be we're talking about an impact on public resources. The land, the air, the water are public resources. And given the capacity that we have to meet the needs of in-state waste, that it is in the public interest of the people of the state of New Hampshire to be able to restrict the amount that we get from out of state. That will be a challenge to the Interstate Commerce Clause. It, I suspect, will likely be the subject of some legal consideration. But as I said, the recommendation for this legislation came out of that discussion with the Attorney General's office. And I think that this is definitely a worthy effort on our part to limit that out-of-state waste from coming in. So I hope folks will support the motion.
Representative Creighton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree completely that it's a worthy effort. I will be voting OTP. I do have a concern that has been, I've discussed at length with several folks, and I still have some concern, but I'm going to vote OTP. My concern is that if you're taking 35% of the tips away from each one of these folks, that's going to have a significant impact on the bottom line for those companies. That those tips, that 35% will potentially be assumed by the current users and the in-state users. So my fear is that the cost to the in-state users will go up, and that's still a concern, but I feel that the benefits outweigh the cost, and I will vote OTP.
Madam Chair, can I?
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say, and I hear Representative Creighton's concerns, and I appreciate his support for the bill. I will say that the bill grandfathers in current landfills and expansions of those landfills. So while there may down the road be an effect that Representative Creighton was referring to, it certainly wouldn't be for quite a long time, because our current landfills will continue to operate under the rules as they exist now. So any addition will not be for some time down the road.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Representative Jamarner for reminding us that the landfills are grandfathered and are exempt for this. And so I will vote OTP on this, but because we only need one more landfill, and if it is going to be a public-private ownership, this bill, in my opinion, is not even needed.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so it is the probabilities of it's difficult to gauge from the votes that we take in this committee the probability of a bill becoming law. That it still needs to make it through several other steps. So I think that if we have two possible options, that increases the chance that we're going to be able to solve the problem.
Representative Potenza.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that. I think that giving, of course, this has to leave here and go to the full house, but giving the other body, kind of an array, a menu of options, I think is a good thing. So I fully support this as well.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is OTP on HB 1632. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart.
Yes.
Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutsy.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Busherman.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
20-0, shall it go on consent?
Yes, seeing no objection. I will close out the exec for HB 1632 and open up the exec for HB 1504. Do I hear a motion? Representative Murray,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move an amendment.
go ahead.
I'd like to move 2024-1210H.
Do I hear a second? I will second that.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Murray, would you please speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we've discussed this in the previous work session at length, so I won't be too long in just saying that I am extremely grateful to everybody who worked on this subcommittee to arrive at, the initial sort of idea that was brought forward before our committee to arrive at where we are. And not to belabor the point, but I think that we all recognize that standing up a program like this is an important step to achieving some of our waste hierarchy goals, and I'm really honored to be able to present the amendment for consideration.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment, Representative Creighton?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Really just great work, Representative Murray. I support it. Thank you.
Representative Bixby?
Yeah, I just want to say how impressed I am with the amount of work that Representative Murray did on this amendment. I think that she's just done an amazing job, and I'm fully in support.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Any other? Representative Germana?
Thank you. I'll join the chorus of applause. And as someone who served on the subcommittee, again, Representative Murray did a fabulous job of organizing that, of leading that, and doing a tremendous amount of work. So thank you.
Any other comment? Representative Cahill?
You guys have all painted a really good.
Let it go, could you?
All right. Awesome. Okay, I would like to have the clerk call the roll on the on the amendment motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is to adopt Amendment 2024-1210H. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart.
Yes.
Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutzy.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Boscheman.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
amendment is adopted 20-0.
Okay. Do I hear a motion for OTPA? Representative Murray?
I'd like to make a motion of OTPA with amendment 2024-1210H.
And I will happily second. And I think we've discussed this, so I have the clerk call the roll on it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion is OTPA. Representative Creighton.
Aye.
Representative Comtois, yes. Representative Phillips.
Yes.
Representative Nelson.
Yes.
Representative Seidel.
Yes.
Representative Cahill.
Yes.
Representative Kenny.
Yes.
Representative Potenza.
Yes.
Representative Smart.
Yes.
Representative Bixby.
Yes.
Representative Sofakidis.
Yes.
Representative Dutzy.
Yes.
Representative Murray.
Yes.
Representative Germana.
Yes.
Representative Haskins.
Aye.
Representative Howard.
Yes.
Representative Nab.
Yes.
Representative Morse.
Yes.
Representative Boscheman.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion passes 20-0. Shall it go on consent?
Yes. Seeing no objection, of course. I'm going to close out HB 1504. And I would like to thank Representative Emily Phillips. And I would like to thank Representative Sheila Seidel and Representative Jody Nelson and Representative Tim Cahill for joining us and sitting in as substitutes this morning. We really appreciate your volunteering and happy to have you on our committee this morning. The other thing I wanted to remind everybody who is going to be owing me committee reports to please get them to me as soon as possible, because our deadline to get out of this committee is the 21st. So we need to get our committee reports in, and that would be Representative Dutsey, myself, Representative Creighton, Representative Bixby, Representative Germana, and Representative Murray on your bill. For this one, yes. No, for the ones that we've exec today, we need committee reports. And one other announcement by Representative Creighton.
Thank you, ma'am. And so the DES Rules Committee next meeting is at 9 on the 2nd. And if we have follow-up questions, Representative Haskins is putting together some. And I think there were a couple others. Representative Murray, I think, had some, and Rep. Potenza. If we can get those to me today, then I'll get those back out for approval, and we'll get those over to DES by the end of the week. Thank you.
Okay, I also, Representative Bixby, go ahead.
Yeah, so I noticed that I think we have a couple of Senate bills sort of waiting for us. I don't know if you heard anything more about that. And I assume we'll probably be taking those up in April.
Yes, I have not seen anything formally yet, but we will begin hearing those in April. I want to remind everybody we've got an invitation for April 16th, 8:30 in the morning from New Hampshire Young Farmers for their annual Young Farmer Committee annual legislative breakfast. And I would ask you please to RSVP to your invitation that you've received. The other thing is we are obviously done with our House bills. We went through 42 bills. I want to congratulate you all for all your hard work and putting up with having to come in twice a week for our committee meetings. Hopefully for what we're going to be getting from the Senate, we won't be having that kind of schedule. But I want to thank everybody for their wonderful work and working together. And it's been a great couple of months. Representative Bixby.
And I'd like to thank Chair Aaron for the great job that she did in terms of organizing the processing of these bills. I think that we moved through them effectively, and it was a little bit tough when we were doing two sessions a week, but I think that the way that she put together a pattern of doing the hearings, doing work sessions promptly so we could assess the bills, and then doing the execs really moved things through very effectively.
Thank you. Representative Sofakaitis.
I just want to thank you, Madam Chair, for your hard work.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Shucks. Okay, well, we'll see you when we see you. Have a great rest of the day. Enjoy it, and thanks again for everything you guys do for your constituents and everyone in New Hampshire. Thank you.